Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Once and Future Parents. If you know my voice from my other podcasts, you know that I've long ago decided that there's no such thing as having a thought that isn't interesting to the whole world. And why have a conversation with my friends if I can't record it and try to make money from it? Or, actually try to inspire other people, give them ideas, welcome them into the conversation. I'm Matthew, aka The Ethical Panda, the host of Superhero Ethics and Star Wars Universe podcast. And as some of you might know, my Jedi family will soon be welcoming its first Padawan. As we record this, I'm about 2 months away from my partner having our baby. I am 4 days away from having all of our family try to get together and get along with each other at our baby shower and being inundated with the capitalism of parenting. And I have been having, great times when I'm about to record with two of my favorite co-hosts on here, telling them about my situation, telling them about the anxiety I have and thoughts I have, and getting great thoughts back from them. And so I decided, instead of just having conversations with Mandy and Pete, why don't we actually do a podcast? So to my two co-hosts, the future parents, the once parents, but still parents of my future parent, now that analogy has been driven entirely into the ground, introduce yourselves.
Mandy, I think we're actually Matthew's parents right now.
No.
I think that's what the metaphor has led.
I flirt with Mandy far too much on her podcast for that to be a thing. This is not okay.
Well, on that note, I am Mandy Kaplan, and I am the host of Make Me a Nerd with Mandy Kaplan, also for the True Story FM family. I take things, especially parenting, extremely seriously. I never joke around.
Never.
What, Pete? Why are you laughing?
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm a very serious person.
You're so serious. Hey, I would never step in your way as a parent.
When spoken to, Pete, I've never made a mistake as a parent or had a doubt or fear. Mm-hmm. I am the master of parenting, and I am here to share my wisdom with all.
So and Mandy is Yoda.
I'm the Yoda of parenting, but maybe I'm going to do it with like a pretentious standard RP accent as I talk.
Oh, I like it.
I just got the chills.
Spoiler, Yoda makes a lot of mistakes. But anyway, Pete, how about yourself?
I'm Pete Wright, and I am here as I'm already done parenting, so I guess the problem is this is an exercise in future regret. Things that I'm learning from you that I can no longer apply to my own kids. That's how I look at it. I'm on a lot of podcasts, and I love podcasting. I podcast with Matthew on the Marvel Movie Minute. I edit Make Me a Nerd for Mandy, and I guess I'm the consigliere of True Story FM. And I'm thrilled to be doing this show. It's very different than anything else we do.
And you brought your good hair, Pete.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm sorry to the listeners.
Today.
There's a nice wave.
It's good.
Volume
it's good.
And lift. Yeah.
See, we have MILFs and DILFs on this podcast. We're covering all the barriers. I will say, Pete, as a person in my late 40s who is dreading the arrival of my parents to see what they think of my countertops, you never actually stop parenting, whether you want to or not. But perhaps you are no longer the parent of minors is the way we can describe you.
That is accurate.
So I gave up in middle school.
That's fair too.
I'm done.
So we're going to have a lot of different things we're going to do on this podcast. A lot of it's going to come down to you, the listeners, of what kind of things you want to hear. But obviously, all three of us come from a background of talking about media. And there's an awful lot of media around parenting, around childhood, around all sorts of things like this, around babysitting, if we want to talk about great 80s movies, great quotation marks there. So there's a lot of the time we are going to talk about how parenting is portrayed in media, and things like that. But there's also a lot of times that we're going to just talk about parenting itself without any references to that. We're going to have different segments. No one episode is going to have every segment, but we're going to have time for talk about media stuff, talk about what's happening in our lives as parents or as future parents and as children. All of us presumably have been parented by others, both biologically and metaphorically and all the rest. And to talk about some of your feedback and questions and answers and things like that. We would love to hear from you, our listeners, and all that. But we're going to start pretty much every episode with one of us sharing a new thing that we've learned about parenting. And probably a lot of it's going to be me saying, oh my God, did you guys know this thing? Which you two probably knew already. But sometimes it'll be just an article we read or a new influence or something like that. But I'm going to start with something I learned in my Babies 101 class. Did you all know that babies can come in purple? Because I didn't know this.
A great place to start.
And apparently they told us that, oh yeah, and by the way, if your child doesn't get like the exact amount of oxygen they should during the birthing process, it's possible that they'll be purple for the first 2 or 3 days. And I was fully expecting, okay, kind of a very lightish, purplish tint. And no, they showed me a child out of an Alien movie, who was just a deep purple skinned. And I think it was meant to have the shock value it was meant to have, and all of the parents went, ah! But they're like, no, this is fine. This is what babies do sometimes. So I'll put it to you all. Did you know that babies can come in purple?
I knew they
Mandy?
could come in yellow, like with jaundice, right?
Uh-huh.
And they're not so pretty when they come out. You could see the veins through their skin, and they look a little freaky,
Yeah.
and not like little perfect movie babies. But I did not know. This is the first time I have not known something, and I did not know that babies could come in purple.
Well, you see, parenting classes have advanced. They're more designed to scare people now. And that's where we are. Pete, what about yourself? Was this new information for you?
You know, I actually had gone through some of that process in seeing the variety of colors which babies can arrive in. Ours did arrive in a yellowish purple because he came in a little early and small, and in fact spent his first several days. Now it's been a long time, but many days in the pediatric, the neonatal ICU, which was, terrifying. And yet, in hindsight, the care was exemplary, and everybody kept telling me, "You don't have anything to worry about. This is totally normal." And I heard, "This is something huge to worry about. It's absolutely not normal. Yours is the first time we've ever seen a baby of this hue, and it's completely traumatizing." So there is a little bit of inverse Babelfish, where the positive language you're hearing, you translate into horror until everything works out. And it's all okay. It's all okay. The colors, they pass.
And see, this is, I'm going to say, one of the points of this podcast is for me to have the chance to share parenting insights and both of you with a little more experience to go, now, actually, you don't have to think about that. We're not going to go too far into this because the first piece of parenting advice both of you shared with me was, Matthew, you're going to be very busy. Don't you dare try to start a podcast about this. But, that part we've moved past because actually you two both want to just talk. So we're going to be just fine in that regard. But the schedule of how often, I at least know enough to know that I'm not going to guarantee a weekly schedule, that we're going to see what the schedule is like after little Padawan arrives. Let's give people a little bit more grounding before we get into our main topic today, which is really going to be about this podcast itself and why we want to do it. But let me just start, Mandy, with you. So how many kids do you have? When did you have them? Just got to give us the grounding of who you are as a parent.
Oh, God, I'm exhausted and drunk. I don't know. I have one absolutely extraordinary son. He is 2 weeks from turning 15. And
wow.
Facebook tells me he's performing this weekend, I believe.
Not this weekend. He's performing in my show. I do a cabaret. He got my genes. He loves to sing and dance. So he's performing in my cabaret in June. But I did post something of him performing in Chicago last month. He's a dream.
Wonderful. And Pete, you have 2 kids, I think, right?
I do. And, the stories, I'm sure, will reveal themselves over the course of our conversations coming.
They're not going to listen to this, our kids.
No, they're not going to know it exists.
All right.
Are you kidding? No, this is a cone of silence.
Yeah.
I've got 2. One, my eldest is a gainfully employed EMT, drives an ambulance and saves lives, and it's extraordinary. My youngest is actually in college, lives in Eugene, goes to the University of Oregon, and it's fantastic, and is in a film studies program.
Great.
And during the summer, he works at a elder care facility and helps the elderly put their pajamas on at night and make sure they can shower. I mean, it's just like I had no clue that my kids would end up being who they are. There was no way to predict, and yet I am just I think about those activities that they are so comfortable with, and I'm just deeply honored with how they ended up wanting to
That's
help
wonderful.
in the world. That is literally the only thing you can ask of your kids is,
Yeah.
will I raise somebody who is willing to help in the world?
But I
mean,
think that's a reflection on you and Kira. I don't think that just happens.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I have found that as someone who also has spent my life wanting to help in the world, that the degree to which your children want to go out and make the world better and the degree to which your children are able to stand on their own 2 feet financially are often inversely proportionally related. But it still seems like a very good goal. And also, I will say, obviously, there's going to be talking from our own personal experiences, but this is not a dirty laundry podcast.
Right.
As I keep telling my own father, I get to choose his nursing home. So in order of preserving your own relationships with children, I do want to give full permission that we may fudge some details of story or, kind of merge some things or stuff like that. So, this is not we're telling about experiences, not necessarily like the biographies of ourselves as parents and all that.
I would say one thing, just as a foundational sort of a thing we can take as axiomatic, and it is mostly for you, Matthew, that so many of the lessons that I have learned as a parent and that I've learned from other parents and grandparents and, those who came before. The thing that I underestimated was the influence I would be able to have on my kids at what age, right? I thought, well, as long as they're living in the house, even after, I can push buttons and they'll, push emotional buttons. They'll do what I tell them. I can teach them things and they'll just learn it and be that. And the fact of the matter is, Mandy and I really are done influencing who our kids are. That ended when they were about 11.
Oh,
Yeah, we're done. Those lessons are there, who they're going to be. And I find that an incredibly humbling experience. And it does raise the level of conscientiousness around what you do before they're 11. And that is a thing I wish I had really heard when our kids were born. Even though I feel like, because everything else, I just got very lucky. That's kind of where I feel.
Can I push back? Not to immediately start with a debate. And this is not my denial, but I don't agree that we have no influence when they're teenagers and young adults. And I think the amount of influence we have is reduced. And I think how we influence has changed. I just model now more than I sit down and explain things to him and teach him the way the world works and how we view the world. I just show him, and I do think that's still influential for him. And recently I started volunteering like a crazy person. Like, I can't stop going to this organization where I help make meals and get food out. And I brought him along and he loved it. And he's like, when can we go again? Can I sign up again? Can I sign up without you? Like, because he saw me doing it and getting joy in it, he wants to do it too.
I'm going to push back on that too, Mandy, because what you are seeing is the influence of your experience on what that kiddo believes that was cemented when he was 11. You already made a good kid, because that's what the brain science is telling us, right? That just says when the kids, like, they are what they believe, their fundamental identity is really formed when they're 11, 12 years old. And so all that other influence and modeling behavior is all good and right and true, but they're fundamentally who they're going to be in the world much earlier than we expect. Much earlier. And we can see that. I guess I have a little bit of a benefit in seeing now a truly adult kid and going back and looking, sort of marching at the milestone moments and seeing, you know what, that plays out. That plays out. They believe what they are going to believe, and they'll do what they're going to do, and they'll take advantage of the opportunities you present to them based on what you already did as a parent, which was great.
Well, I have to say, I'm of two minds of this, hearing you two, because on the one hand, Pete, I really want to believe what you're saying. And I have read some of the science that points in that direction. And I want to believe it, if nothing else, because when I look at the exorbitant amount I'm going to pay for childcare at a childcare facility that is telling me all the wonderful things it's going to be teaching my 6-month-old, I want to believe that's an important time.
Right.
I will also say, though, and this is another, like, we're not going to use this podcast as therapy, but I'm definitely going to be talking about, especially for me at some of the crux, the biggest influence that I have in terms of the example of parenting that I have is from my own parents, who are both good people in their own ways. My mother's passed away, my father's still with us, but both had some real challenges in their role as parents, and there's certainly a lot of ways in which they affected me past the age of 18 and as adults. And when I look at the course of my life and look at some of the major personality shifts that I've gone through, they were by no means over at age 11. I'd say that the person who I am at kind of a life crisis I went through at age 30 probably more changed me than anything that happened the first 11 years. But I definitely also hear what you're saying about in terms of, I think it's like the foundations and the building blocks are established, and like you could build anything you want on a foundation, but still it's going to fit that foundation. So
well, and once their brains are baked at about 25, you find like all of us as adults can make serious identity changes as we go through life. We can change who we are. Absolutely we can. But again, that foundation, you laid that as a good parent very early. And that is just a thing that I think about a lot.
yeah.
So, just so I have this right, grown-ups can change. So I should be trying to change my husband and morph him into
Sure.
what I want. Okay.
Sure.
Like, and especially by not telling him what you want to be,
Yes.
just by trying to like manipulate and change and do all that sort of thing.
the word of the
that
day is
old dog
gaslighting.
is going to learn some new tricks.
I will say one of my happiest moments was when my now partner, who was at that point my fiance, met one of my aunts who said, "Now remember, good husbands aren't born, they're made." And she pushed back very strongly on that idea and said, "No, he's a wonderful partner already." And I was very proud of that. So let's get into our main topic for this week, which is why do we want to do this podcast? I've talked a little bit about it for myself, and I'll talk more about it. Definitely something that happened to me before age 11, as my parents said, "We want to hear more from you." And now podcasters, listeners all around the world are suffering from that. But for you all, what was kind of your reaction when I came to you with this idea, and why you decided you want to be a part of it?
Wait, why did I want to become a parent, or why did I want to do a
Why did you want to become a podcaster? Why did you want to be part of this podcast?
Oh, well, on my own podcast, I am now at age 50 learning and embracing all of these new things about nerd culture and sci-fi and fantasy and all of that. And you both have been part of that journey for me. And Matthew, you and I just have this great way of getting into deeper, layered topics so quickly while also having a ton of fun and nerding out.
And crying every now and then.
And I cry every time. I know I'm going to cry on this podcast. Full disclosure, this is going to happen. But I think that the chance to talk about something I'm passionate about with two people I have great chemistry with and I'm going to learn from and hopefully impart some wisdom, it all just really felt perfect.
Yeah.
When you pitched the idea, it felt right. So here we are.
I like it. Pete, what about yourself?
I was dragooned.
Yeah, it's somewhat true.
I mean, you guys know me. My love language is podcasts. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, I don't do any other podcast quite like this. And now I'm firmly in my 50s, and I feel like the things that I think about are changing. As I look at my kids, as I look at my relationship with my wife, and I think about the impact we want to have on the people who know us and love us. And I feel like this is a laboratory to have these conversations with two people that I trust and love very much. And I just really, I consider myself so very lucky to have you both in my life, professionally and personally. And the idea of being able to share this space and talk about something that is so heavily on my mind with you two is important. And so I don't have any business taking on another podcast right now. I really don't. But this one was just too hard to say no to.
Well, and I did, in full disclosure, make the promise to Pete that all the work he normally has to do about like the editing and stuff, I would take on. So he gets to just talk in this situation. Granted, he might listen to my editing and decide he just wants to step in a bit every now and then, but he doesn't know that might happen.
Edited? Is that what we're talking about?
We'll see. But I was Pete. I'm very deeply touched by what you just said. I think I feel the same way. You two are people who I have never been in a physical room with, probably never been within 500 miles, at least been aware of that, and yet feel very close to, feel very connected to. And I think kind of we earlier made jokes about like how I'm at this incredibly different point in the timeline of parenting. But I do think one reason why I also feel connected to you is that, but that I am not of a completely different generation than you are.
Right.
I'm 47. I'm almost 48, so I'm only a couple of years younger than Mandy. Maybe a few more years younger than you, Pete. But we're all basically of the same generation. And while I'm coming to parenting much later in life, I think that also gives us much more of a shared vocabulary, particularly about media and parenting, but also just about all of this stuff in general.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I'm really interested in how you think about quite frankly, aging as a parent, coming into becoming a new parent at your age means you're going to be dealing with the things that Mandy and I have dealt with much later. And I'm already tired and I want to know what you're doing.
I mean, I have some youthful energy. I also have a partner who is a good deal younger than I am, which is its own thing. And people can make fun of me all they want for that. But also I will say, I mean, and at some point, we'll have a whole topic about why we decided to become parents. Yeah. But I'll mention that one of the reasons why, for a long time, I hadn't thought I wanted to be a parent. And then I met my partner, Mary, now. And we talked about always wanted to build a life. And I know parenting was very important to her. And she kind of showed me a new understanding of like what it could be like. That really helped me realize, among other things, one of the things I didn't want was the nuclear parenting model that my parents had gone through. I don't know if you all ever had this. But there was a long period of time where my mother's only friends were the parents of my friends. And I've read a lot of stuff about how for a long time, nuclear parenting models of the 80s and 90s and et cetera were very much not even family focused, they were kid focused. With the idea that a parent's whole life should be taking them to soccer practice and to theater and all that kind of stuff. I now live in a city where we have, because of step parents, we have 6 grandparents, all live within 10 minutes of us. 13 aunts and uncles, all of whom are going to be very happy to babysit and to hang out, and 4 other people in the family who are all currently pregnant or have had babies within the last 6 months, all of whom are planning to do some like co-parenting events together, and so I really have a sense of like, I'm going to be in the village, that we always spoke about, it takes a village. And that's something I think I never thought was possible, but that was a big part of why I thought, I want to have a kid. And so to me, that's kind of what this podcast is as well, is about, sharing more with you guys who are also part of my village, just in a much more, far off way. But, getting to communicate and hear these ideas, because I think one of the things that podcasting has really helped me remember is that different people have different experiences and we can learn from those truths, and that your experience isn't going to be my experience, but I can learn from how you faced a problem and figure that out somewhat differently. Or I can tell you how I faced a problem and you can feel very smug about you did it much better, or, whatever it is going to be.
Go ahead.
How old were you when you became a father?
30, 31. Have to count. Yeah, I mean 30-ish. Somewhere.
Okay.
I don't do math on podcasts.
Right. I was 34 and my OBGYN said this is a geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah.
After
or whatever that means.
In the throat.
Right.
Yeah, I was a little older. And so I was just curious what your experience was. And now Matthew is even older than that, but it is different when you are already feeling some aches and pains, but you're also already much more fully baked in who you are and your confidence in the world and your way of life. So
let me ask you this, Mandy, both of you, how old were your mothers when you were born?
So my parents were quite older. So we're talking about how I frankly feel very lucky that my father's going to get to meet my grandchildren because he is 84. He keeps himself in very good shape in ways that annoy me because I eat much worse than he does. So I have to change how I cook when he comes here. But he is 84 and my mother's passed away. And I think I'm the oldest of our 2 children. When I was born, my father was 37 and my mother was 35. So yeah, they also both started pretty late.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I never was the same age as my cousins because their siblings all got pregnant in their early 20s. So it was just very different age things. And I think it's definitely something interesting is that like in that parenting class, there was one other couple that was nearer my age, but for the most part, it was mostly people in their mid 20s or so. So yeah, like even that, like the 34 being geriatric, like it sounds ridiculous, but I get that that's where, there's all sorts of politics and ideas around what age people have children and stuff like that we can talk about. But
well, my mom was 28 when she had me, but she's fascinating to me that my mom is a feminist and very outspoken. She had a career. I was a latchkey kid because my mom worked a full-time job. But when I was pregnant, which is a different episode, I never wanted to be pregnant. I only wanted to adopt. But I got pregnant, and I was surprised to find out my mom said all I ever wanted to do was be a mom. I wanted to have kids and be pregnant and go through all of that. And my mom was the best mom in the world. But I was like, you wanted to, I find that hard to believe because you were so passionate about your career and working and feminism and all of these other things. And she said, yeah, but I also just dreamt of being pregnant and having babies and being a mom. So.
Yeah. My mom, the way I've only heard her characterize this recently, probably after the death of my dad 3 years ago, where she said, I went from my childhood bedroom to my marriage bed, she said, like a real old-timey person.
Wow.
And that was at 19. And she had me at 21, 22, so pretty young on the early end of their marriage. And so I guess in that way sort of found herself the most traditional of the three of us, for sure. That was me. And I think the nuclear family conceit is right there. I mean, that's our backyard because my parents took me away from all the family, which was, had its issues, and they moved us to another state. We had no aunts and uncles. We had no family around. So it was just the three of us. And that's its own, sort of dynamic that, it's interesting now to watch my mom as she's found herself much later in life and found, had gone through a number of different sort of careers long after I left. Everything's sort of inverted. And it's interesting as a parent to watch with the perspective of having been their child.
Yeah, I can really see that. And that actually is, we're getting very therapy here, but it's kind of group therapy. No one's the leader. But a question I want to put to you guys, because one thing I have really been wrestling with is that, as I said, I think my parents made a lot of mistakes. And for a long time, I wanted to be a parent so that I could show my father a better way to do it. And until I realized that my grandfather had been an awful dad to him, and that he was trying his best to not do that. And that actually is a pretty terrible way to approach anything, is by trying not to be what something else is. But I'm kind of curious, do you all think of, and again, if I'm getting too personal, we can move aside, but when you think of the way you were parented, did that give you mostly positive examples you wanted to follow? Were there things where you were like, you know what, my mom was great, but she did this, and I'm never going to do that? How did you kind of look to what your parents did with you or with your siblings as a model of what you wanted to be?
This is Pete and Mandy deep in thought.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Matthew Fox.
There you go.
The Ethical Panda. I won't delve too deep, but I do think my mom was an exemplary mom, as I said. She made everything fun. She also had rules and boundaries and stuck to them. And I think if she made mistakes, I can look back and understand, like, well, yeah, that's how it was done, or that's what she thought was best. I did not have a great relationship with my dad, so I will keep that to myself for now.
That's totally fine.
So I think I had both things modeled. Like, here's what I hope to be, and here's what I will avoid. Did that answer your
Yeah.
question at all?
No,
Or
very
did
much
I
so.
just...
Very much so.
And look how I didn't cry at all.
You did so good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just, when I was younger and I thought I wanted to be in the arts or be a writer, and I thought maybe like how young is too young to develop like alcoholism, because I thought I had to have trauma in order to be good at anything, because my childhood had really no trauma. And my family, my parents, like they were young enough parents that by the time I was 10, 12, 15, they were my buddies, like
Yeah.
they were my friends. And I grew up in a sort of mindset of not wanting to disappoint my friends just so much as I would not want to be punished by my parents. And that, I think, like, when I got in trouble, it was because my dad and I were together misbehaving, right?
Right.
Oh my gosh, dad and Pete ate too many ding dongs and now don't want to eat dinner and mom's mad, right? Like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like we were always sort of co-conspirators
What a
between the three of us.
bastard.
It was right. I know. And so yeah, I mean, I think I legitimately struggle because my role model behavior for my parents was how it must be impossible to have a hard time with kids, because look at me, I'm so great and our relationship is awesome.
Yeah.
And I did do some stuff. High school was harder than that. High school became troublesome. But yeah, I that was a huge surprise especially when we had a child and then another child.
Right.
That's its own thing I had no experience with. So it really changed that role model behavior that the tape that was running in my head just got shattered.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is going to be a big difference between us, because I very much not have and I don't want to in any way minimize the trauma and stuff you guys are talking about, but I definitely, when I think of my parents as parents, I think of them as two genuinely good people who tried to do their best. But, my mother was wrestling with alcoholism for most of my childhood and she wound up dying of it. And my father definitely had a lot of his issues, again, related to his own father. And it's like part of why I'm starting parenthood so late is I didn't want to have, not that my father and I have the greatest relationship in the world, but like I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of over my daddy issues. And I kind of knew I needed to be at that before I thought about becoming a parent myself. One note for listeners, by the way, I'm going to refer to myself as a parent. I present male, but I'm non-binary, so I use that word instead of father or daddy, but we'll see if that changes over time. But yeah, so I just think it's really interesting because I do think that we are shaped by, the images of parenting we get from our parents, from our friends. And that maybe is a transition to what's kind of I don't know yet how much of the podcast media is going to be. Because frankly, when I originally pitched this to Pete, I was thinking it's a true story podcast. I have to connect it to media somehow. And Pete went, why? Which I kind of love that our podcast is just that open. So it may be that we never really talk about media, but I don't really also know how to have conversations without referencing media all the
That's what I was
time.
gonna
That's
say.
our collective problem, right?
Yeah.
Look at the three of us, right? Our
Right.
lives revolve around movies, TV, books, podcasts. So I wouldn't want to eliminate that from the equation. And as we were talking, of course, I want to quote things that I've seen. And all of what we're saying came up so much on Roseanne, a show I love and cherish. Maybe we're not supposed to love her anymore, but the original Roseanne, they talked quite a bit about we're going to make it better for our kids than we had it, and hopefully that carries on. And that was really the whole mission for Dan and Roseanne, was just make it a little bit better. One of our kids will go to college. Our kids won't be physically abused, which is something they talked about on that show. And so a lot of what I think about, I think we were all shaped by what we watched and continue to watch. And I will never get through a half-hour conversation without quoting a sitcom from the 90s. So
no, and I'm sure we're going to talk in more depth, but I think you could. It would be fair to say that movies and release schedules of new films defined the marker of time through my youth. Like my parents loved movies so
Yeah.
much. My dad was the station manager of a television station, news director of a television station for decades. Like that defined my youth, was media. So yeah, we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a shared vernacular, and probably a vernacular we share with a lot of our listeners. And I'll say that it is something I'm noticing a lot, because as I'm going through the pregnancy process, learning things like, for example, the word morning and morning sickness is also often a misnomer. My partner, Mary, has just been nauseous most of the day, and
Just sick.
I carry ginger candies with me wherever I go now, and we always have ginger ale.
I told you about ice cubes,
Ice
right?
Yep, they help. They help.
On the pulse points.
But I think one of the things that I'll be talking about a lot is like, what are the things that, as much as I'm doing my research and reading a lot of things, because of what I watched, I had these expectations that are proving not to be true. One of which is I never saw a healthy baby come out purple on television. But another one I'm realizing is almost every time I have seen a character on TV go into the process of labor, it starts with their water breaking in the most inappropriate, either funny or tragic or kind of way. And so when I read a book of Emily Oster is someone who I'm going to strongly recommend. She writes a lot of great books of where she looks at the mythologies and ideas we pass down and really looks at the statistics, and was talking about how labor begins and stuff. And when she mentioned that, something around 15 to 20% of people start the labor process by their water breaking in that way, I was knocked over. Because every single movie about childhood where someone gives birth starts with that scene,
So, but that is just that it's a great visual and it's a great indicator for everybody to catch up real fast. But may I interject with a story?
Please.
Most of my friends have kids. Only one of them has a story about her water breaking. No one else did it.
Yeah.
But dear friend of ours, Mandy Fabian, my former co-host on the Man Cave, had to go to a casual friend's house who very kindly said, you can have our hand-me-down, whatever it was, crib and dresser, and just figure out a time to come get it. And Mandy being Mandy, I should have changed her name. Darn it. Mandy being not Mandy.
Bianca.
Left it to the last minute, and was like, so I got to go to her house today and I got to get all this stuff. And I'm like, you are 25 months pregnant. Why are you doing this now? Why didn't you do it 6 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago? She goes, and this lovely woman is just going on with her sad stories and blah, 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 and won't let Mandy go. And Mandy's water broke all over her living room.
It's a great conversation ender.
That's perfect.
The ultimate revenge was just like, well, you're keeping me here too long. And she just let her rip. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, but that's the only person I know whose water broke.
Well, as I've mentioned to other people, my partner got pregnant. She discovered she was pregnant 2 days before we were going to send in a payment to a fertility clinic that we were going to start working with. So because we'd been trying for many years, nothing had happened, and then of course all of a sudden it did. And so I do believe that our pregnancy began out of spite, and so the idea that someone would go into labor out of spite also makes perfect sense to me. I do want to keep these episodes not going too long, if nothing else, because I'm going to try to do them between, I just put the baby down. I've got 45 minutes to record before the next diaper or feeding or something needs to happen. Or I'm going to get Pete to teach me how to edit out baby crying noises from a podcast. But let me close with this last question then. So that was it for me. What was something that you realized you'd come to believe about parenting from the movies or the TV shows that you'd watched that you realized was actually not the case?
You got one, Mandy? I got one off the dome.
Go.
That when my child would come to me with a question, that I would have an answer. And that ended right about second grade math, probably. More than that, just that the questions that are staged in the media that I grew up with were obviously questions where the characters were being written aspirationally. likely by writers who wouldn't have known, or their parents wouldn't have known those answers, and were writing a better youth for themselves. But I was conditioned as a result in thinking that somehow becoming a father would bestow upon me a new sense of wisdom that I would be able to just improvisationally answer wisely when my children came with whatever question it was. And that is just not true. And it is only through, struggle and experience and trial and error that answers come. And it's just like anything else. And I think it is that sort of retroactive humility, right? That I only realize sometimes years later the answer that would have been appropriate to a very difficult question in my kids' youth. And so maybe this podcast is a way to atone for some of that.
Well, I will say, so among the things that are making me sad, that becoming a parent won't make me understand geometry in a way that I didn't understand when I went to my dad for.
I regret to inform you, it will not. Yeah.
I had a moment. I had a moment of exactly, I think, what you're talking about just today. The child of someone very close to us, we found out today, has been getting really badly bullied as a 6-year-old, and it's really making her sad. And my first response was, much more Uncle Roy from Ted Lasso than any kind of like actual healthy parental response. Right. And had a moment of like, I need to get myself out of thinking that way now that I'm becoming a parent, because, but Mandy, go ahead.
I don't know that goes away. But,
no, that's probably
my
true.
first reaction is like, out of curiosity, what is the bully's address?
Yeah.
Do they have any allergies or weaknesses?
Everything I learned about friendships, I learned from Heather's.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Moby Dick.
So uncharacteristically, my answer is, I think, dark. But postpartum depression is not something that was ever talked about.
Yeah.
On TV, in the movies. You just didn't see it. And I didn't think it would happen to me. And thankfully, when Casey was born, I never felt disconnected from him. And I never felt what some women feel, which is, don't give me that baby. I don't want to. I never felt that. I am grateful every day. I'm not going to cry. But I warn Mary and all women who are about to give birth, there is a high. You get this baby, your hormones are all high. You buzz, you go home, you don't care that you're not sleeping. It's glorious. And then there's a physical hormone crash. I think it's about 10 days to 2 weeks after, where chemically we want to die. Chemically we feel that, what have I done? My whole life is ruined. Yes, I love this baby, but I don't want to be a mom anymore. I mean, it's a very common thing that no one talked about. I found that alarming. I didn't know. I try to warn people. I've had many friends say, thank God you told me about this, because they know it's normal. Unfortunately for me, after the crash, I didn't even out for a year. I was very depressed. And that was just so shocking. I'm not a depressed person. I'm a pull myself up by the bootstraps kind of person. And I think I was a wonderful mom. And I loved Casey completely and totally. But when I tell you, I cried all day, every day for a year. Yeah. And that is one of the topics I want to cover is how do we, in a future episode, when we feel like we have lost ourselves to this journey, how do we get ourselves back and take care of ourselves in this? So that's my dark answer is I didn't know how just run over by a truck I would feel emotionally. I don't mean the being tired and all of that. That's,
Yeah. No, I think it's very real. And to me, that highlights a number of things. One is just like that very specific issue of postpartum and how do we keep emotional balance? And that's something that is relevant for all parents, but also like there are specific hormones that estrogen having people who've given birth go through that Pete and I are not going to be able to directly relate to. And that's very important. But also just that also ties into a larger question around mental health and parenting, both in terms of I'm someone who has, pretty much the exact same mental health issues as my mother did. And that is the degree to which that is circumstantial versus genetic is something I've certainly worried about a lot with my kids. And also, I'm ADHD, I'm autistic, and so like even when we were looking at childcare centers, we were talking about like how good are you at diagnosing or identifying these kind of factors and stuff like that. So it sounds like I'm minimizing the postpartum stuff, and I don't mean to do that at all. I think that very specific is very important, and that's something we should definitely do episodes about. But I also think that kind of unlocks a larger set of topics around mental health of parents, mental health of children, mental health systems. And it also ties into one other question that I think is going to be really interesting is, because I do think this is an area where we have had progress as a society. Postpartum depression happens a lot to characters in TV and movies now. And I'm not going to by any means say it's like therefore cured, we're fine. But it does feel like at least the media that I've experienced before becoming a parent is very different than what you guys have experienced. And I think that's going to be helpful to talk about from both perspectives.
And I credit Brooke Shields with a lot of that turn. And I know that's a bold statement, but she was inspirational. And I don't mean to be gender specific about postpartum depression. It is a chemical thing that happens to the person who gave birth, but it nearly killed my wonderful husband, not being able to help me go through it and losing himself and losing his wife. I mean, it's this shit is real and it's hard. And it's also the best thing you'll ever do and full of joy and, but it's hard.
And I think that I actually want to do a whole topic on, because at the baby showers bring up all the issues around like gender reveal and stuff like that. And I definitely want to have some conversations about gender as a person who's transgender myself, non-binary. But yeah, I don't want us to feel like we have to be perfect with our language. I think that, I think it's important to acknowledge the reality that there are people of all genders who can be, play whatever role they do, but that there are also chemical biological realities that people who have, the birth process within their bodies, the female reproductive system that isn't necessarily confined to women, but is still, a biological reality. Being able to talk about that is just as important. So if our language goes back and forth between birth giver and mother and stuff like that, I think as long as we're acknowledging the overall reality, that's fine.
Phew.
I just want to lock in as a result of doing this podcast that whoever your wonderful child turns out to be, Matthew, I will be Uncle Pete. That's the important part. And
that's what we need to know.
As long as that's okay, then everything else will be fine.
Okay. I will be sending you our registry then, because Uncle Pete should definitely be getting something for us.
Well played, Matthew. Well played.
Look, I'm already nervous about this because while I felt very grateful about it, because I got married during COVID, we just decided to put the wedding live streamed it so that my family could watch, and it wound up like getting on the internet, and a lot of the viewers and listeners of my podcast watched. And because that website had the wedding registry, I got gifts from some of the people who listened. So which I was like, that's really sweet. I never, ever want to feel pressure for anyone to do that. My family's quite well off financially. Please, we don't need it. But if a link to the wedding registry, the baby registry went out somewhere with one of these podcasts,
end up in the show notes,
I wouldn't complain, Exactly. Well, this has been great. I'm really looking forward to this. I really feel so close to you guys, and I kind of feel like this. I'm going to be a help to this as much as I would be if we just three got together to have fun. But we're such wonderful, insightful, articulate people. Why not share our thoughts with everyone else? And more importantly, more benevolently, get them to share their thoughts with us and tell us when we're idiots or whatever it is. So any closing words from either of you?
Oh, God. I'm supposed to say something brilliant and sparkly.
You wrote a speech, right?
Yes. 4 score. No, I'm very excited for this, and I think I'm going to learn a lot and also laugh a lot and cry a lot.
And you'll teach a lot.
I didn't want to say it. Thank you for saying it.
There you go.
And from our part, I will just say that as soon as I get the website built up for this very show, there will be a button on it, and you can submit your questions there anonymously if you want, and send us your thoughts and questions. It will be delivered straight to us in our little system here, and we would love to hear your thoughts and be able to integrate those into future episodes.
Definitely. And at some point, hopefully, we will have a schedule we're going to commit to So therefore also people can even watch the live stream and live comment to us. I'm not making any schedule commitments until about a month after the baby is born, and we have some idea of what the schedule is going to be like around here, but we'll get to all that. So
I have a hunch
so
that there will be. Oh, I know, right? I have a hunch that there will be a period.
With your 1 month old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. Where Mandy and I might be flying with guests for just
Yes.
a little while.
That's
Just a
entirely
little
possible.
while, and that will be parenting
wishing you
advice for
well.
Matthew episodes, and it'll be
Yes.
great.
That's very like I said, we have family members who are going to be fighting for the right to babysit. So I think carving out a couple hours for podcasting will be very possible, but you may be wrong. You may be correct. So we will see. And a lot of parents are probably nodding at you too and going, God, what an idiot Matthew is going to be, but we'll enjoy hearing all about their naivete. So on behalf of myself, Mandy, Pete, thank you all so much for listening. May the force be with you.